Night. A New Mexico desert sleeps under a heavy July silence. The wind drags across barbed wire fences. Distant cattle shuffle. Skies above stretch in a black sheet, broken only by faint stars. Then something cuts through it. A streak. Too fast for aircraft, too low for a meteor. No thunder, only a sharp, unnatural descent toward a remote ranch outside Roswell. For a moment, the desert holds its breath. Something had fallen. And nothing about it felt normal. At sunrise, rancher William MacBrazel rides out to check damaged fences after a storm. What he finds instead is an unnatural trail of debris. Long strips of metallic material, lightweight but impossible to bend. Symbols etched into fragments like nothing from local aviation. The desert, usually predictable, presents a puzzle that seems to have fallen from a different blueprint. Brazel picks up a piece. It snaps back into its original shape. He mutters something about kids, toys tossed from a plane, then stops mid-thought. No one flies out here for fun. No one drops metallic toys in the middle of the country. He tosses the piece again, watches it straighten itself, and his horse steps back as if unimpressed with the whole situation. Brazel decides to report the incident. He rides out to Roswell and tells Sheriff George Wilcox. Wilcox listens, expression unreadable, then calls the Roswell Army Airfield. Within hours, military personnel arrive at the ranch. They cordon the area. They take samples. They photograph everything. Their movements are organized, almost too organized, for what is supposedly trash in a field. Witnesses later describe officers behaving with a quiet urgency. They move with purpose. They communicate in hushed tones. They collect the metallic debris as if it were something more significant than a balloon part or aircraft scrap. Rumors start circulating in Roswell. Strange lights seen the night before. Military trucks driving through town at unusual hours. Brazel telling neighbors he found something not from around here, and the base taking the debris without hesitation. Welcome to Obscura Files. Today, we retrace one of the most disputed incidents in modern history. A crash that sparked decades of theories. A story rewritten more times than any military report should ever be. And an event that, whether alien or human, became the cornerstone of America's UFO narrative. Post-war America stands at a crossroads. The public fears Soviet advancements. The military experiments with new aviation technology. Radar stations expand. Secrecy thickens across government institutions. In this world of espionage, innovation, and paranoia, something crashes in a New Mexico desert. Major Jesse Marcel, intelligence officer, arrives at the site. He examines the debris field. He notes the strange properties of the material. He loads fragments into military vehicles. And he tells superiors that the wreckage is unlike anything he has ever handled. His report sets in motion a chain reaction that will push Roswell from small-town obscurity to global myth. As the military moves the debris to the base, the story is about to take its first dramatic turn. A press release, a sudden reversal, contradicting statements from the U.S. Army, and a switch so abrupt it still puzzles investigators today. The July sun rises over the base. Inside the intelligence office, Major Jesse Marcel examines fragments under lamplight. He runs his thumb along a piece that refuses to bend. He looks at another officer and says something about engineers wanting to keep these pieces for souvenirs, if they weren't so classified. He turns back to the debris, knowing that whatever this is, it requires a public explanation. The press release that started it all. At 2:26 p.m., the Roswell Army Airfield issues a statement. It's brief, direct, almost too direct. RAF captures a flying disc. 2 lines. No footnotes. No technical jargon. Just a casual mention of finding something the world has been arguing about ever since. Within minutes, telephones ring across newsrooms across the country. Editors shout across rooms. Flying disc? What do you mean, a disc? Reporters scramble for details. Radio stations interrupt broadcasts. A desert incident instantly becomes national news. Newspapers print early editions with bold headlines. Army says, flying saucer found. People gather around newsstands. Rumors spread in streets and cafes. Every conversation begins with the same sentence. Did you hear? And for the first time, Roswell becomes the center of the world. Back at the base, phones heat up. Officials call higher commands. Higher commands call even higher commands. Reports move up the chain so quickly that some officers joke they should attach wings to the paperwork. The excitement shifts to tension. The phrasing of the press release suddenly feels like a mistake. Very few people want to explain an actual flying disc to the Pentagon. The next morning, a new statement appears. This one paints a different picture. Actually, it was a weather balloon, not a disc. Not unusual debris. Just a balloon. The original announcement disappears from conversation as if it never existed. Reporters feel whiplash. Citizens feel confused. Researchers decades later still tilt their heads at how fast the story changed. At Fort Worth Army Airfield, Brigadier General Roger Ramey presents the real debris to the press. Material that looks nothing like what witnesses describe. Ordinary balloon fragments. Metal, foil, balsa wood. Major Marcel stands beside him, expression neutral, as if silently rehearsing the universal military rule. Smile at the camera and avoid saying something that creates more paperwork. His eyes tell a different story than the official line, and investigators today often begin here. Back in Roswell, Rancher Brazel returns home, frustrated. He tells a friend the balloon explanation doesn't match what he found. Neighbors whisper. Witnesses recall truck convoys filled with strange crates, not balloon pieces. And people who handled the original debris say the press photos look like props from an aviation classroom. Something doesn't align. Civilians begin collecting statements. Radio hosts interview locals. Amateur researchers record timelines. People document the military's rapid behavior changes. It becomes clear that the official narrative is shifting faster than the public can follow. Two versions of the same event now exist. The first one speaks of a disc. The second one insists on a balloon. There is no third option offered. No technical clarification. No consistent chain of explanation. And the inconsistency plants the seed for what Roswell becomes in the decades to follow. A mystery that expands each time someone tries to simplify it. Next, we follow the secret programs behind the scenes. The ones operating under code names. The ones that might explain why the military reacted the way it did. Or why the cover story changed twice in 24 hours. It's C-1947. America is entering the Cold War. Secrecy is a resource. Information is rationed. Entire programs operate without names, only code numbers. Roswell doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens inside a system built to hide almost everything. Project Mogul, a high-altitude surveillance program, so classified at the time that even most military staff didn't know its real purpose. The idea: if you can hear a nuclear explosion across continents, you can predict threats before they begin. On paper, Mogul explains the debris. In practice, many who handled the original material say it didn't match what the later balloon debris looked like. A small contradiction, one of many. We see interviews recorded decades later. Marcel recalling metals that returned to shape. Civilians describing crates loaded quickly onto trucks at night. Military policemen mentioning unusual security for something supposedly ordinary. Even the base commander initially green-lit the flying disc announcement, which isn't a phrase commanders casually use during lunch breaks. The subtle humor comes through naturally here. It fits the officer's confusion, not as a joke. Witnesses describe guards who were suddenly, unusually alert. Orders came in that no one should approach. A sealed container arrived. Some say they saw wreckage. Others say bodies. Nothing confirmed. Nothing disproved. Every account contradicts another just slightly enough to keep the mystery alive. Black ink covers more than it reveals. When intelligence officers arrive, base personnel step back. The hierarchy becomes visible. Roswell stops being a local incident and becomes a federal one. Witnesses recall unusual cargo, wrapped and strapped. Some mention metallic panels. Others mention sealed boxes. Nobody gets close enough to confirm anything. Yet everyone remembers the unusual speed of the operation. Inside briefing rooms, officers receive new talking points. Balloon.
All right, folks, that's the word for
Nothing
upstairs.
unusual.
Balloon.
End of discussion. Some look relieved.
Official line.
Others
Sir, it doesn't even
look
look like
unconvinced.
I know, but it's what we have.
Marcel returns home later, and his family recalls him muttering that the balloon explanation wasn't exactly accurate. His wording is vague. His tone isn't. He sounds like a man trying to follow orders and logic at the same time. Old photographs surface. Files link to Wright-Patterson Air Base. Rumors of biological examinations circulate years later. No official confirmation. Every so-called autopsy video is either debunked or disputed, depending on who you ask. But the existence of the rumors suggests something else. The public believes the military hid more than metal. Whether that belief is grounded or speculative becomes part of the Roswell ecosystem itself. Roswell becomes a point on a vast map. Cold War paranoia, nuclear tests, espionage, experimental aircraft, government secrecy. The incident grows not because of what happened, but because of what wasn't said. Where information stops, mystery begins. The Roswell file never really closed. It simply changed shape. For decades, official statements arrived in layers, weather balloon, then project mogul, then crash dummies, then reassurances that nothing unusual had happened. Each revision created distance between the event and the witnesses who lived through it. And those witnesses, they didn't all agree with the new version. Men who had spent their careers around aircraft, weapons, radar, balloons, and experimental hardware insisted the debris they handled in 1947 didn't match anything they'd been trained to identify. Some described metal that folded like paper but couldn't be creased. Others remembered beams with symbols burned into the surface. Not one of them recalled a balloon. As time passed, the story moved from the desert into attics, archives, and interview tapes. Bits of memory preserved in brittle VHS recordings. Handwritten notes kept in envelopes for half a century. A few photographs whose meaning depends entirely on who is explaining them. The silence of missing documents hangs over all of it. Orders that were supposedly routine, but now sit in the shadows with no surviving copies. And then there's the chain of command. A press release announcing a captured disc, a sudden reversal hours later, and the quiet movement of debris behind restricted doors, guarded by men who didn't speak about that night again. Roswell became something else over the years. Not just an event, but a symbol. A moment where the official record and the eyewitness record separated and never met again. A reminder that some stories go missing, not because they were erased, but because someone decided they didn't belong to the public. The desert still holds its silence, and the base still holds its history. People change, policies shift, departments reorganize, but the story stays where it has always been, trapped between what was seen, what was said, and what was allowed to remain on paper. And that might be why Roswell refuses to fade. It isn't the debris. It isn't the headlines. It's the gap, wide, uncomfortable, and impossible to close. Between those who were there and those who controlled the narrative afterward. That gap didn't end in 1947. It simply moved on to other places. And before we close this file, there's one more detail that's been sitting in the corner of my desk. A different case. different witnesses, but the same pattern of silence. Another moment in history where the explanation arrived faster than the truth ever did. It happened the following year. A man found dead on an Australian beach. No identification, no clear cause of death, and a hidden slip of paper sewn into his clothing with 2 words, Taman Shud. A message that quietly translates to, ended. And maybe Roswell wasn't the only event someone wanted buried. But that's a story for another night. And another investigation. Because some mysteries don't wait to be solved. They wait to be found.